Do you kind of pay attention as you're one of the big gorillas in the room? Do you pay attention to what some of these startups are doing, or do you learn from them at all? Are you inspired by them at all to try different things?
Oh, I can't tell you how inspired we are. I do pay attention because there's a lot of great development taking place. And that's because I think each of them fundamentally, when we talk to these startup companies, many of them are former practitioners who say, there is a better way to do this. I did this in my practice for years, and there's a better way to accomplish this task.
Today on Law Next, what does it mean to be a data-driven lawyer? We speak with Jeff Pfeifer, the Vice President who leads product strategy and development for LexisNexis Legal and Regulatory in North America. He believes that the future of law practice is legal analytics, and he's been methodically working to make LexisNexis the legal analytics company. This is Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to Law Next, the podcast that brings you the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. In today's episode, I spoke live with Jeff at the annual meeting of the International Legal Technology Association at National Harbor, Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C. We'll get to today's interview in just a moment, but first, let's hear from the sponsors who generously support Law Next. And now, on to this week's interview.
Jeff Pfeifer, welcome to Law Next.
Bob, it's good to be with you.
Jeff, I wanted to start by talking to a little bit about what it is you do at LexisNexis. I thought it was interesting that you were recognized this year as one of the Fastcase 50 by another research company for being one of the smartest, most courageous innovators, techies, visionaries, and leaders in the law. As Vice President of Product Management at LexisNexis Legal and Regulatory, what do you do?
Well, thank you, Bob. And first, I'll say thanks to my good friend Ed Walters at Fastcase, because I think it's fantastic how he and his company have taken time to recognize some of the great startup activity and technology work that's happening in law. But at LexisNexis, I'm lucky. I have the good fortune of working with a team of folks that are thinking about how we transform both the practice of law and legal research specifically. So my team is responsible for our product development vision and strategy in North America. And so that means we are looking at both our traditional products that your listeners are likely to know us for, like our legal research solutions like Lexis Advance, but also new tools and services that we're developing to support our vision for how we think the consumption of information is going to change in the legal industry over time.
And just to give people context for anybody who might not know, where does LexisNexis Legal and Regulatory fit within LexisNexis, the grand scheme of a company?
Sure. First, so I'll even take a step above that. LexisNexis is part of an organization called the RELX Group. And the RELX Group is a collection of businesses that is looking to solve through data professional decision insights problems in a whole variety of industries, from flight data collection to science and healthcare to challenges for risk professionals. So we are part of a broader organization that's looking at how we leverage technology and analytics specifically to help drive new insights in data. So LexisNexis Legal and Professional is one of the 4 core divisions of the RELX Group. And again, our focus is on the legal market and attorneys and legal information professionals in particular. And so my team, we're looking specifically at those use case problems and challenges that people have in the legal market. But it's highly analogous to the work that we see and the development that's taking place in lots of other industries as well.
What was the career path that took you to the position of being where you are today?
Yeah, so interestingly, I'm a veteran of the legal industry. I've been with LexisNexis now for almost 30 years. And so I was initially one of those trained on our early tools like the infamous UBIC and some of the early technology developments from LexisNexis. But I have been in product management most of my career. I have looked at how we collect our content. I've managed our content portfolio for a number of years, and recently, about 4 years ago, became responsible for our broader product development team, and again, focusing on the US and Canada in specific.
So with your job being to drive overall product strategy for legal and regulatory, as we're sitting here today, 3/4 through the way through 2018, how do you define kind of the high-level mission of LexisNexis Legal and Regulatory?
So at a very high level, our company mission is to support the rule of law. So all of our employees are well-versed in the idea that the reason we exist around the world and in the US in particular is to support and strengthen the rule of law. So we focus on where we can contribute to the pillars of a strong rule of law focus. But importantly in that, one aspect of strong rule of law is traditionally transparency into the law and the ability to access key information about the law, both for practitioners like lawyers, but also for consumers. And so we have been focused for many years on playing a role globally in strengthening the rule of law. We're proud to be a founding member of a group called Business for Rule of Law, which works directly with the UN to strengthen and drive a stronger development of the rule of law, because we see a really strong correlation between things like GDP, quality of life, stability of society, and a strong rule of law. So for us as a business, that really drives what we do every day. And then specifically within the practice, we look at where the tools we develop help our customers in their support of the rule of law, whether that's counseling outside clients, whether that is driving new insights that help create new and original legal arguments. For us, our focus is really on driving the tools and the solutions that help lawyers make better decisions and provide better counsel to their clients.
As you and I are talking right now, we are both at the International Legal Technology Association annual conference in National Harbor, just outside of Washington, D.C., where the driving theme seems to be innovation. The driving theme of just about everything these days that you hear about in law seems to be innovation. The keynote speaker this morning was talking about how to drive innovation within your organization. I wonder, you alluded to the fact that, more than alluded, you talked about the fact that you've been for LexisNexis for a long time. I mean, LexisNexis is in a lot of ways the granddaddy of legal research. I mean, the foundation of this company was really was it the Ohio State Bar, wasn't it, that originally kind of created a legal research product that eventually evolved into what you are today. So how, given that you're so well established, given that you've been around so long, how important is it for an organization such as this to continue to innovate? And I guess as I was thinking, listening to the keynote this morning, I'm thinking everybody's talking about how to innovate, but it seems like not enough people are talking about why innovate in the first place. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are and whether that's important and why it's important.
Yeah, I would say that our view is, number one, people ask me all the time about massive disruption or change that's likely to impact law. And questions often posited like, when will the Uber of law come along to really disrupt this space? And in a lot of ways, we feel excited about that question because in many ways, we feel like we did that at an earlier stage of our history. We were the first to innovate in the legal research space and bring electronic research to the law. And deep in our DNA, that's really what we're about. We think about primarily how do we look at use cases and determine new solutions to problems that lawyers have had for a long time. So that might be originally for us how to conduct research, but increasingly now it's looking at new use cases and seeing where technology or other tools might help us solve problems. We like to say that many of the things that are being innovated today or have the opportunity to be innovation areas of the future are issues that people have had for a very long time. And so what's new today is that we have some new technology tools to help us solve those problems. We have some computing power that we didn't have historically. And the convergence of those two things really gives us some great opportunity. So for us as an organization, we really drive a focus on innovation culturally, and we use a number of tools to do that. We are big believers in design sprint methodology, which helps us explore problems that customers have and iterate on them very rapidly. We focus deeply on lean development, which means we burst activity in small sprints to test ideas with our customers and see if they are resonating with customers. And then we greenlight projects for development that seem to have a lot of traction and solve a real problem. I think there's a lot of technology now that is in search of a problem, and we always try to flip and say, let's deeply understand what the issue is, what the problem is a lawyer is having, and then figure out how we develop from there. But beyond our internal methodology, we focus on other activities to stay very close to what's happening. A good example would be our Legal Tech Accelerator program, which helps us stay very, very close to the startup community. We're, in fact, kicking off our third cohort of that program right now and accepting applications literally as we speak. And we're excited by the number of companies that want to join the program. But for us, selfishly, it's also a way for us to stay really close to new development activities and see where new ideas are resonating with the market. And at the same time, it gives us an opportunity to give back to the community and share some of what we've learned along the way with the legal tech startup community.
So innovation isn't just a marketing ploy or a buzzword. It's a way of listening to the problems that customers are having and finding better ways to address those problems.
I think so. There's always a debate in many organizations about whether you should foster innovation separately as a team that's working on innovation ideas or more broadly. And we are squarely in the latter camp. We focus on driving innovation culturally and again, always focus from a use case perspective. What is the problem that we've identified? Can we validate that it's big and important and it's really worth solving? And then if we can, we look at the best way to solve it, leveraging our data assets and our technology assets that help us look at delivering new solutions to the market.
So one area that you've moved into in a big way over the last couple of years has been in analytics. In 2016, you acquired the legal analytics company Lex Machina, and you acquired Intelligize, and then last year you acquired Ravel Law, which had an analytics component. What drove those acquisitions? What was the overall strategy that caused you to start focusing more than you had in the past on data and analytics and law?
Sure. It's funny. I remember we had a conversation about 3.5 years ago.
I was thinking about that. Yeah.
At Legal Tech in New York, where we were starting down this path. And at the time, what we identified was an area that big law and big corporations in particular emphasized a number of use case problems that they did not see as well served in the market at the time. So there were a whole host of questions. What venue is right for this particular filing? What language is a judge most likely to cite in granting or denying a motion? If I'm a computer services company, a software developer, and I'm thinking about filing my 10K, and I'm thinking about what are the risk factors that I should disclose and which ones are trending up and which ones are trending down, those are questions that they identified as critical to solve, but no one was really solving well at the time. And as we looked at the problem, we saw an opportunity to solve that problem by converging content in clean big data sets, which we have a lot of, and new technology that helped us look at answering those questions in a better way. And at the time, my idea was that was what we saw as data-driven law. The idea in software, for example, we talk about data-driven methodologies all the time. You look at data to help inform and make important choices about how you develop your product. And we saw a similar opportunity in law to help get the information that professionals have always needed, but they didn't have access to previously. So when we started down that road a few years ago, we first saw an opportunity in Lex Machina to acquire a best-in-class organization that emerged from a public interest project at Stanford to look at how information could be mined out of docket data and solve important questions. Subsequently, we also saw in Intelligize a similar opportunity, a company that was looking at deeply mining information out of the SEC collection, the documents filed with the SEC to drive new insights. And then finally, with our acquisition of Ravel a year ago, we were really interested in the work that they were doing to mine language patterns out of written case law opinions, briefs, pleadings, motions, et cetera. That fit very nicely with some work that we were doing internally. So we had worked over time to develop some legislative forecasting capabilities, a number of other tools that when the package comes together, we see an opportunity to provide, again, data to help drive or inform decisions in a new way for lawyers. And again, we call that data-driven law. That's culminated for us over the last 30 days or so in the launch of a new package that we call Lexis Analytics. And the focus there is really on helping lawyers in all practice areas gain insights and mine conclusions out of data that were previously not knowable, because there really wasn't an easy way to mine through the volume of information to get those insights.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, I guess it's fair to say Lexis Analytics is the culmination of those acquisitions you've made. It's the way you've kind of pulled that all together into a single product, if you want to call it that. Why did you decide to acquire in the first place as opposed to build internally? Because you were already working on analytics internally. You had other analytics-based products at the time. And why did you go that route?
Sure. We always look at a balance between organic development in-house, where we see there's an opportunity to solve a problem with an amazing set of engineering talent that we've developed. And then we also look at best-in-breed companies that are doing unique things with technology and or have solved a problem in a really unique way. With Lex Machina in particular, as I said, we were really intrigued by the work they had done with Stanford and that public interest project, because it validated for us that the use case problems were real and that the companies that were involved very early in that project cared passionately about solving a problem in the intellectual property space. So with each of the acquisitions we've made, and believe me, we look at dozens more that we don't make, but we select those companies that are doing really breakthrough, unique work that we think will help us pay off this vision of data-driven law faster for our customers. In each case, what we've found as well is that the depth of content resources available from LexisNexis have enabled each of these companies and the solutions that we provide now to grow much faster than they would otherwise. So where Lex Machina worked, for example, on 3 practice areas over nearly 8 years, we've introduced an additional 6 practice areas in the last 2. So for us, really the pace of development and the access to content are really important things that we can help leverage these technologies and now bring it together in this package that we call Lexis Analytics.
We'll get back to my interviews in just a moment. But first, let's take a break to hear from the sponsors who generously support Law Next. And now, let's continue this week's interview.
What are the challenges to applying analytics into these different practice areas? I mean, what's the work that goes on behind the scenes to make that able to be happen? I mean, as you said, that you've been able to speed up Lex Machina's expansion into other practice areas. What are the obstacles in doing that in the first place?
Well, first and foremost, it's a great question, because I have a saying that I like to use, which is bad data in, bad analytics out. And so a challenge overall in providing high quality analytics is ensuring that you have clean data that's enriched and tagged with key information necessary to mine that data and provide effective, reliable analytics for the user. And so in the practice area space, for example, The initial problem that we encountered when trying to craft litigation analytics is that the primary method of sorting data within, say, PACER data is nature of suit codes. And nature of suit codes are inevitably not reliable as a way to identify whether a case should be in that practice area or other practice areas. And so our Lex Machina team, for example, takes great pains to ensure that we rely on and add metadata to the underlying information to more granularly mark data at the practice level. So fundamentally, we believe that for analytics to be powerful, they have to be practice area based. And so we take great steps to add additional metadata to our data, going well beyond the nature of suit code type tagging to ensure that the user is able to mine the information in an effective way and provide, again, very practice specific detail.
With the launch of Lexis Analytics in July, you've kind of divided this this world of analytics into three spheres, if you want to call it that: transaction, regulatory, and litigation. Can you explain that, describe that a little bit more? What was the thinking between kind of breaking it up in that way?
Sure. So going back to what we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, use cases drive us. So as we looked at the different types of law, whether it be litigation or transactional practice or regulatory practice, we saw very different use cases driving the analytics needs for lawyers in those areas. So fundamentally to us, as we talk to clients, it made sense that we organize our development activities and the packaging of Lexis Analytics around the way lawyers work. So Lexis Analytics is fundamentally built for lawyers in each of those areas: litigation, regulatory practice, and transaction practice. And the tools that we have in each of those areas are designed to meet the use case requirements of lawyers in each area. And LexisNexis is really the only company today developing analytics across that entire portfolio. So while there's a lot of activity in litigation right now, we see just tremendous opportunity in spaces like regulatory and compliance practice, transaction practice, where, again, questions like I noted earlier, like a risk factor disclosure is a really important problem, or determining what's market for a clause as you're drafting an agreement. Those are things we can do now because we can mine this volume of information, and we've built discrete tools that are aligned to the use cases of lawyers in each of those practice areas.
What's an example? I mean, I think lawyers or legal professionals are probably more familiar with analytics in the litigation category because we're all familiar with the idea of, how long does it take a judge to decide a particular kind of motion or a particular kind of case to move through the docket. What's an example of how you can use analytics in, say, the transactional category?
Sure. I mean, a very specific use case would be looking at a clause and determining whether a specific clause is appropriate to market, is appropriate based on similar deal transactions, depending on what the agreement might be. Take an M&A agreement, for example. A very common use case would be exploring whether or not that clause is appropriate for the agreement that you're trying to draft based on similar transactions of a certain transaction size. Those are things now that we can easily identify. The other thing that we can do that our customers really respond best to is the ability to find types of clauses. Take a clause type like a gold in the backyard clause. By leveraging extensive machine learning capabilities, we're now able to mine data and find those clauses when obviously there's no expression of gold in the backyard in the clause itself. So we're able to find those clause expressions and then offer them as sample material. What our customers are really excited about is that we can do that on model data, precedent data like is filed with the SEC. But increasingly, they tell us that they want to do that on their own data. And so what we've been working on through our Lexis Search Advantage solution is adding that technical capability, which was initially developed by Intelligize, to help law firms mine their own data collections, particularly of contract, agreement, or transaction type documents, and be able to mine those same clause level details out of their internal documents.
You announced Lexis Analytics in July through some odd coincidence on virtually, I think, the very same day that you announced this. Westlaw announced its new kind of the next generation of its legal research platform, Westlaw Edge, which has a significant analytics component to it. So does the fact of your probably biggest competitor getting into this analytics space impact your strategy going forward around this area?
Not at all. In fact, as I mentioned, we've been in the analytics space now through either direct work or the companies we've acquired for more than 10 years. So for us, we believe fundamentally that it's all about the quality of the data and the markup that goes into the data to drive superior analytics results. And we think our customers will see that when they look at the information that we add to the data, whether it be granular information around timing, whether it be tagging at practice level as opposed to nature of suit code, where we mine and extract core information out of the documents that are attached to the docket, things like specific damages and remedies that can only be extracted through the review of humans as well as technology. We think that at the end of the day, customers will see that our information and the quality of our analytics is simply better. And that is because we take real pain to ensure that the quality of the markup and the data itself is able to be mined in ways that draw these core conclusions and insights out of the data.
This is unprecedented that I've gone 20 minutes into an interview and we haven't talked about artificial intelligence once, but I did want to ask you about what you're doing with regard. Let's start with what you're doing with regard to artificial intelligence and making, whether that's becoming a component of your strategy going forward, your product strategy going forward.
Sure. It's funny. As you said, we're here at ILTA, and last year at this time, the hype around machine learning and artificial intelligence was off the charts. And fundamentally, I think a lot of people, including many of our law firm customers, have found that working with artificial intelligence technologies is really difficult. It takes a massive amount of data, especially good training data, and it takes a group of subject experts that are able to work with technologists to ensure that the quality and the output of that work is top notch. And so I think there is a bit of a trough of disillusionment, so to speak, around the use of artificial intelligence technologies. But at LexisNexis, we see it as a technology that can help us solve problems. Again, we never go in search of an application for a technology. We start with the problem we're trying to solve. And what we find with artificial intelligence and machine learning in particular is that it is tremendously helpful to solve some problems around open Q&A. So if we are at the point where a user can interact with our service to ask a series of questions, the underlying services that we've built that allow us to recognize the intent of the user query and then to transform the answer set so that it's more on point to the query, that's a great application of the technology.
Which is Lexis Answers that you introduced last year.
A couple of years ago, we first introduced a solution called Lexis Answers.
Was that a couple of years ago?
Yeah, 2 years already.
So flies.
Importantly for us, that was enabled because we had made a series of investments in our underlying technology platform that supported machine learning technology capabilities as far back as that point. And over the time since, we've been working to tune those data sets and to improve the quality of the answers. As I know you know from seeing Lexis Answers, we've had the ability for customers to interact with our answers and tell us whether they like the quality of the answer, whether they think it is helpful to answering their question. And by giving us that feedback, we're able to continue to tune and drive up the quality of the answers that we can deliver via a service like Lexis Answers, which is, again, powered by underlying machine learning technology. So I think there are a lot of great use cases that will solve over time, but I do think it's a long road, and we're only seeing the really early stages of the development benefit from artificial intelligence technologies in general.
Looking forward over the next year to 5 years, what's the roadmap? What are you working on?
So for a long time, we're going to be focused on the value and the output of analytics. There is so much runway to cover. There are so many use cases that are at this point undeveloped. So we're going to continue to build out that collection and the suite of tools in all three of the areas I mentioned: litigation, regulatory practice, transaction practice.
And is that to the I don't want to say to the exclusion of AI, but I mean, you're going to be focusing much more on analytics than on AI, developing AI solutions during that time?
Not at all. In fact, machine learning technology underpins every one of our solutions in the analytics space. So we're looking at mining the data so that we can draw conclusions out like, where is the collection of gold in the backyard clauses? That is really fundamentally a machine learning exercise so that we can recognize clause level expression that is valuable to the question that the researcher has. So we see the path to be parallel, and we will be developing and continuing to develop our machine learning based capabilities at the same time that we develop out the Lexis Analytics suite. But there are lots of great things that we think also hold promise. We think there's really some interesting development in the bot space. So whether it actually is voice expression is probably a separate debate, but the general framework of bot interaction would be really helpful to open question answering. So if you are able to ask our service a question and we're able to then engage in a dialogue to help you refine the questions that you have, that holds a lot of promise. And as we've talked to customers, they're very intrigued by that idea specifically.
One last question I was curious about, there's a lot of kind of interesting startups in the legal research space, and you talked earlier about working with startups. Do you kind of pay attention, as you're one of the big gorillas in the room, do you pay attention to what some of these startups are doing, or do you learn from them at all? Are you inspired by them at all to try different things?
Oh, I can't tell you how inspired we are. I do pay attention because there's a lot of great development taking place, and we see so much interesting startup activity in the market in general. I think it's fair to say it's the highest level that I've ever seen. There are more legal tech startups now than we've ever seen in history at any point. And that's because I think each of them fundamentally, when we talk to these startup companies, many of them are former practitioners who say, there is a better way to do this. I did this in my practice for years, and there's a better way to accomplish this task. So as I work with them, what I'm really encouraged by is, number one, the fact that they are so use case driven, that they also are very focused on lean, innovative development. How do we get something to market quickly so that they can evolve and iterate on the idea? And so, yeah, there are a lot of great ideas that are coming from that community, and we'll partner with some of these organizations. Some of them may ultimately be acquisition candidates for us because of the great work that they're doing. But fundamentally, I would say that it's an exciting time right now because there is so much technology that's at our disposal, so much computing power that's at our disposal. And I think these are things that only suggest really good things for the future of legal technology.
Well, on that note, thank you very much. Thanks. It's been great to talk to you, and thanks for taking the time out of this busy convention to sit and record with me today. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, Bob. It was great to be with you.
That's it for my interview with Jeff Pfeifer. If you like what you heard today, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a positive comment. And be sure to subscribe to hear future episodes. This is Bob Ambrogi. Thanks for listening.